Okay.
If you would start by, since this is for the benefit of people who may be watching this on video, if you would tell us your district, your party affiliation, and then because we're redrawing the districts, if you would just briefly describe the geography of the old district and how it changed under redistricting.
Good, thank you. So District 24, which is right now, the old district, it was around outer East Portland and then toward Happy Valley and Clackamas County. And now it's changed to include Boring and Clackamas, not Boring and Damascus area.
Okay.
So that's kind of the change, the new area that I received, or at least included in my district since the redistricting took place.
Okay. And you are?
I'm Senator Casey Chama.
The incumbent in Senate District 24.
District 24, yes.
And your party affiliation is?
Democrat.
Okay. So if you don't mind, I'm familiar with your bio from previous visits, but for the benefit of our audience, could you tell us a little bit about how you got here today, where you grew up, what you've done for a living before entering the legislature, and why you're seeking re-election?
Thank you. So again, my name is Senator Casey Chama. I represent District 24. My life story is really one that drives my passion, which is around, I came to this country as a refugee, former refugee from Somalia. But before I moved from Somalia, I actually also grew up as a nomad child. And in nomad lifestyle, generally the whole family unit works together to achieve common goal, making sure their survival depends on each other. And when I moved to Mogadishu, which is the capital of Somalia, that's the first time I noticed I'm different, because I wasn't a city boy. I was a nomad kid who moved to a big city. So I used that opportunity to exercise my leadership and end up becoming a student leader in Somalia, from elementary school to all the way to high school when I graduated high school. And of course, then the civil war took place, and I have to flee from my own country for seeking for safety and opportunities. So that led me to come to the United States as a refugee in 1998. And that allowed me, of course, when I came to refugees, I faced any other challenges of refugees who are come to new country are facing, for example, lack of opportunities, housing issues, jobs, healthcare, cultural shock, all of those things that refugees and immigrants experience, I also experienced myself. And later on, again, and I took it as an opportunity to change the situation that I am in and also help others. I became a case manager at Lieutenant Community Services Northwest, which is a social service refugee resettlement agency that works with the refugee population. So the table is turned around again, and now I became helping the refugees to resettle in Oregon and supporting that way. Later on, I realized that there is a really bigger cause that's calling me, which is really how do I connect the issues migrant refugees community are facing to the large issues that our society are struggling with. And with that, I started what used to be called now Center for Intercultural Organizing, and now became Unite Oregon as a social justice organization, grassroots organization. And as a founder, I was able to mobilize and organize our community members and expand that organization from startup organization to now, when I left organization with 4 offices in the state, from Clackamas County, Multnomah County, Washington County, and Medford, Oregon, all the way to Medford, Oregon. And the whole goal was that really to bring urban-rural community together to work for common cause and for economic and racial justice and immigrant refugee rights. That's kind of my background of my work. Mm-hmm. But then, of course, one day I was driving on the Senate, on the Salem, and I was advocating for the issues that I care about it. And it dawned to me that the challenge that we face always, our issues are not heard a lot of times as refugees and immigrants and low-income Oregonians. And as I was driving from Salem, I said, why not me? Why can't I represent the community that I should be representing and be the part of the decision-making process? That allowed me to really come back, and I talked to my wife, and we analyzed it, our goals and objectives and our scenarios that we're dealing with. And then I decided to throw my hat on the ring and really challenge, my former senator, Rod Monroe, and so it became, as you know, three-way race, and I lost that race to Shamir Fagan. And later on, I was appointed after Shamir left, elected as Secretary of State. Then the question to you, going back to your question about why am I running for re-election? I think representation matters. My district is really a district with high low-income community members, people who are being displaced from inner East Portland, people who are immigrant refugees, people who are also long-term Oregonians who are being in many ways abandoned and left behind by the economic system that we have. And for me, as someone who was always trying to make the connections, I decided again to run for the Senate for that reason. And when I came to the Senate, I ended up doing exactly what I said I'm going to do, which really represents my district. And now I'm running for re-election because I do believe it's unfinished business, and I have to continue to fight people who live in the District 24 so we can be at the table as we move forward for 2023. So that's why I'm running for re-election.
Okay. In your time after you were appointed to the seat, can you tell us about a bill that you worked on, either sponsored or were part of the team, that you would point to and say that's why my constituents, or that bill made my constituents or all Oregonians better off? I did something.
Thank you. So the bill that I will probably highlight is the creation of the Office of Immigrant Refugee Advancement. I was advocating that office, creation of that office, for 11 years, and I couldn't do it. And when I was appointed, the first bill that I submitted was that bill that would create that office. And I was able to accomplish what I couldn't accomplish for 11 years, for 6 months. And that was my first success. And I think that tells us that representation matters. When people who have experience in certain issues be at the table, things can happen, and we can make things happen. So that's one success that I can share.
Where is that Office of Refugee Advancement? Where is it located?
Right now it's under the ODHS, Oregon Department of Health and Human Services, ODHS, and so there is a new director that they just hired probably about 9 months ago, and she's working to establish the office as we speak.
Okay. What do you think? What do you think will be different with a person that's enmeshed and housed within state government from before, when I assume it was nonprofits and advocates who were trying to do that work?
I think we have a system of government that really should be representing all people and dealing with the issues that all people experience, all Oregonians experiencing. So the segment of the population that this office is dealing with, it's a population sometimes we overlook a lot of times. So what this office will be accomplishing is to ensure there's a cohesive strategy across the state agencies and across the community to ensure that immigrant refugee community are included in our decision-making process, whether economic issues, whether it's democracy issues, whether it's housing, whether it's environmental issues, whatever we are doing with the pushing forward as a community, to ensure there should be an office that really ensuring that pointing this, hey, make sure that immigrant refugee community are included, and helping to strategize other agencies to accomplish those goals.
So I realize that you're no longer at Unite Oregon, but these issues for refugees and new Oregonians are probably still very important to you. Do you have a sense of how Oregon does in that area relative to, say, Washington? Because California is so much bigger, has so many different issues. How do we stack up compared to Washington in terms of the way that we welcome and resettle people who are coming here as refugees or immigrants?
I think, first of all, let me put it this way. I think Oregon is a very welcoming state. I'm really grateful how Oregon welcomes the immigrant refugee community. Having said that, there's still a lot of work to be done. So my hope is that as we move forward together as a community, this office, the new office that we created, plus the settlement agencies that in our community who are settlement refugees, will ensure that our immigrant refugee community are at the center of our core values of welcoming immigrant refugee community. And that's really what I'm pushing as a state legislator, as well as a leader, to ensure that all our communities are welcome. So I believe, let me give you an example. When the Afghan crisis happened, and we saw what happened on our TV screens about what was going on in Kabul, I went immediately to call one of my colleagues in the House, Representative Khan Fan.
Yep.
And both of us were like, what's going on? What can we do? Because I was triggered by what was happening myself as a refugee, former refugee.
Yep.
And we talked about it, and we both collaborated together, and we were able to go to the emergency board and really allow Oregon to invest $18 million. That is the largest investment in that crisis in the nation. California, I think, was the closest. I think they were invested. I believe it was $15 or $17 million. But what it tell you is that when leaders who have direct experience those issues take a lead, we can accomplish a lot, and that's the value that Oregon always has been, for me at least personally, being a welcoming state and show that we can welcome more refugees into our community.
So those are that's a very positive development. Tell me about your biggest frustration as a legislator. What have you found that surprised you, or have you found that is a barrier to getting more work done?
I think it's a really important question. So my response to you would be more about in terms of my failure as a legislator, first newbie legislator. So one of my, for example, things that I'm really passionate about and I couldn't accomplish when I was in Salem for the last few sessions was that campaign reform bill that will allow to limit the campaign contribution in our state. I couldn't do it. It was frustrating. It was challenging. No one was telling me. Everyone I talked to was like, "Yes, we need that," but somehow it just would not move forward. And so that was frustrating to me. And that's and I saw sometimes the limitations of being in Salem.
So we've had Democratic control. The Democrats often speak of the need for campaign finance reform. We've had Democratic control since 2007 in the House, except for 1 year, 2011, when there was a tie. The Senate has been in Democratic control longer than that. We've had a Democratic governor since 1987. So why do you think it has been so hard? People talk about it every cycle, every 2 years. We hear people come in here and say, we need to reform campaign finance. How come it hasn't happened?
I can't speak for all the other members of my caucus. What I can tell you is that I can speak for myself.
Sure.
And personally, it's something that I'm really passionate about it, and I will continue to work harder to ensure that we have campaign contribution limits in this state. And I'm hoping that 2023 will be the year to do that.
But what kind of barriers did you run into?
I think no one can explain to me why they didn't want this to happen. I think people were just really, I couldn't get a clear picture why we couldn't do it. Everyone I spoke to was saying that it was a great idea. Actually, the voters mandated us to do that, as you know, by passing ballot initiative, statewide ballot initiative. But in this Salem, no one could explain to me why we wouldn't be able to do it. But yet somehow it's stuck in the system.
Okay. In Salem, as I said, Democrats have enjoyed recently a supermajority, which means you can do whatever, in theory, you could do whatever you want, except campaign finance reform. But I'm wondering if you can point to an issue or a bill on which you worked together with a Republican colleague to try and get something done.
I think that's a really good question. What I can tell you, my housing, I am the housing chair in the Senate. So my colleagues in the housing chair and my vice chair, Senator Anderson, and I work closely together in terms of making sure that the housing issues in our state to be dealt with. So there is a numerous bills that we work together, collectively together, him and I, as a chair and the vice chair, that we were able to push forward. Example will be, I believe the $400 million that we pushed forward for the during this short session. Now we're working together for getting ready, hopefully to get ready for 2023. So what I can tell you is I'm a collaborator. Really, that's what I bring to the Senate. I try to work with everybody, and I establish well relationship with my community, whether they're Republican or Democrats. And that's why we think we were able to move in the Senate Housing Committee a lot of bills that otherwise would not have passed. We were able to collectively push it forward. So I would just say the success is about collaboration of working together across the aisle.
Okay. So when you read reports from the State Economist or from Eco Northwest, the consulting firm, they often talk about the fact that Oregon is among the lowest 2 or 3 states in the nation in terms of housing production. That's all housing, because you're on the housing, you're leading the housing committee, that it's not enough to build affordable housing because that's only a small percentage of all the housing. But Oregon has a terrible record when it comes to building new housing, even though we all agree we need it, even though Democrats are in charge, even though there's a lot of federal money, there's a fair amount of state money, there's local money with the Metro housing bond, with the Metro supportive services measure. So I bet a lot of people in Senate District 24 have the same question I have, which is, why is it so hard to develop new housing in Oregon?
So let me say this. The issues that housing that we're dealing right now is not created overnight. This has been decades making, that's for sure.
Yes.
So it is, we're doing solutions right now as we speak, but it will take a time to ensure that some of the strategies that we put forward to be showing results. What I can tell you right now, after the pandemic ended, we, as the 2023 session comes along, if I get re-elected and get the opportunity to serve again, my goal is going to be production and production and production, targeted production, ensuring that not only, as you said, affordable housing, but more across the board, affordable, at least to build more housing units. So increasing the housing stock is going to be one of my top priority as we speak. So
of course that requires money, but let's set money aside, because sometimes, like right now, we have money. What specifically could you do if you're reelected and remain chair of the Senate Housing Committee? What specifically could you do to help increase production?
What I'm actually planning to do is to bring all the stakeholders, to the developers, the legislators, my colleagues, and have a work group together, collectively to strategize together. Because I personally, my belief is that, one person can do a lot, but more people can do more than one person.
Right.
So my strategies always have been working across the community. So what I can tell you right now is that I'm going to be making sure that we work together. And again, I already put the motion in that issue to ensure that we create a work group and to ensure that we are collaborating and make sure that the work group recommendations will help us to get to where we need to be to increase the production.
We hear from housing developers, certainly in Portland, and really from the housing advocates statewide sometimes, that there are building code issues, that there are zoning issues, that there are policy, aspirational policy issues around green building, or around who builds, or around how much they get paid. In other words, there are a lot of barriers to production in addition to just dollars. Do you think that's accurate?
I think they are accurate statement. I think really it reflects some of the challenges that we're facing. So again, going back to is that we need to look at all those issues that you mentioned to ensure that as holistically as we can, what are the barriers for housing production as a state, including money, including policy, including all the elements that you mentioned. But I think the question that I always have to ask ourselves also is that, who are we building for? I think we have to really make sure that Oregonians, both socioeconomics for low-income Oregonians to the middle class to upper middle class, those houses, as we work together, as we build, we want to make sure that all of these community members are being taken care of. So the housing production is not only just a housing production strategy, but also ensuring that we build the right houses for the right community members. So it has to be all across the board, socioeconomics, to ensure to have equity and to ensure that all Oregonians are being taken care of.
Are you spending time knocking on doors?
I have some doors knocking, yes. I actually, yesterday, as we speak, I was actually door knocking.
Okay. So what is for the door knocking that you've done, and maybe you have a constituent coffee or other meetings with constituents, what's the biggest issue for your constituents, single biggest issue that you're hearing about?
Housing.
Okay.
Housing.
One of the things that I've been surprised at, maybe I shouldn't be, is that there are reports from the state that show that while housing is a very big issue in Portland, it's an even bigger issue in some other cities such as Medford, Klamath Falls, that all over the state, in every single community, that we have, in rural Oregon, we just have a shortage in every single place. And so I wonder, when you talk to Republican colleagues or rural Democratic colleagues, do you think they're feeling the same thing that you are?
I think absolutely yes. I actually was recently, during the summer, I was in the Eastern Economic Conference in Pendleton, Oregon. And I was there just to really get to connect to the community out there, and also connect and see what's going on, to ensure that I understand a little bit more about what's going on in the rural area. And I took a housing tour, and a couple of things that I got out of that conversation. One is that housing issues is actually all Oregonians' issues, no matter where they live, whether urban or rural area. Second thing is that housing cost is higher in our state. So, for example, when I went to one of the housing tours, I saw the houses I saw was starting $325,000. In rural Oregon economics, someone who's those communities, $325,000 is a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So affordability across the state, across the board, from Pendleton, Oregon to Northeast Portland, we have to ensure that we also address some of those issues, and so that's one of my takeaway from that trip that I took.
One of the things that we're always looking for in candidates is independence, and I'm wondering if there's a place where you would say, well, yes, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not just a party line Democrat. I think for myself, and here's a place I disagree with many of my colleagues or caucus members. Is there an issue or a bill where you've said, I hear you, but I don't agree with you and I won't vote with you?
I think it's, let me put it this way first of all. I think when I got there in Salem, one of the things that surprised that I learned from is that I think probably, despite of what the headlines show, 80 to 90% of the time, both Republican and Democrats agree everything. There's like 10% of the time that there is some, fights and some, disagreement taking place. So in unit, I think Oregon actually, in many ways, we worked collectively across the board. Mm-hmm. In terms of to your question, it's about whether I have a disagreement on my body. I'll give you an example. When I got there first time, one of the bills that Senator Anderson was pushing forward was a bill that was, I think there was an issue around taxing the stimulus checks from those Oregonians who are receiving stimulus checks from the federal government during COVID-19. I agree with him. I said we shouldn't be taxing. Those are my constituency in East Portland was calling me and contacting me. It's like, how come you're taxing my stimulus check? And I disagree with it, my body, and I told them. So that would be an example for me that I'm an independent person in as much as I can. Mm-hmm. And to ensure, to your point also, I think it goes both ways also. So one of the things that, for example, I really, really would like to share in terms of how we need to work across the aisle to ensure that there's collaboration between the Democrats and Republicans is that when I get there, I started making calls from all my colleagues, whether they're Republican or Democrats, just kind of getting Zoom calls. We're in the pandemic, so like, hey, can we have a half an hour Zoom call of your time? And I was able to reach out to Senator Hansel, and we were good first time meeting, and we're just chatting and getting to know each other. And really, he said something that's very profound, that's very unique right now. And this country needs more than ever. What he told me with that conversation was that, Casey, we may be disagree policies, we may have a different ideology in terms of the party affiliation, but you will never be my enemy. And that really has a profound impact of me, because that's kind of a type of collaboration that we need to do. And I think in the United States right now, where we are as a country, it's actually that we need more reflection like that. We have to reflect, and we have to really put the temperature down and really see this as we're a community collectively, regardless of how much we disagree about policy issues. So those are some of the lessons learned from as I go in terms of my own, as a newbie, as a new senator, experiencing asylum last 2 years.
I want to ask you a question. I'm probably going to veer into controversial territory here, but I'll ask you anyway. So Multnomah County, in its charter review proposals, has sent 6 proposals to the ballot. One is something that hasn't been done elsewhere in the country, and that is to expand the opportunity to vote as widely as possible. And in this case, it would include people who are not U.S. citizens. Are you familiar with that proposal?
I mean, I'm aware of it, the proposal, yes.
So what do you think about that?
I think the question is, the issue is that, one, first of all, do we want to make sure that we build inclusive communities? And do we expand our democracy to include everyone? And those are the values as Oregonians that we have to grapple with. And I do believe that Oregonians are very compassionate, caring people, and has those values overall, in general speaking. So my response to your question is that in some limited situation is that I think whether the school board or whether it's local elections, there's some jurisdictions who are already doing that. So I think it will be something that we need to explore as a community.
Okay. All right, we have half an hour. We are at our time, so I'm going to ask you the question that we're asking every candidate. It's a little bit of just to get to know you better. It also may offend you. I hope it doesn't. And that is, if we knew that today was the last day for all of us, and the world was going to end, and you got to eat only one thing before the world ended, what would that one food, or it could be a drink, what would that one thing be?
I came from a country that has a lot of growth, a lot of banana. And I can't have a meal without a banana.
Okay.
So I would probably say banana would be, if I've been given one choice, it would be I kind of get some bananas.
Okay. That is great. So there must be a lot of different kinds of bananas in the world, but we only ever see that one, right? The Ecuadorian banana.
Yes.
So in Somalia, were there a lot of different kinds of bananas?
I mean, yes, but the main one that we have is actually very similar to what we have here, but it's very sweeter. So we used to export before the war started. We used to export to Middle East and as well as Italy, as far as Italy. And it actually was really only rich people can afford to buy it. It's Somali banana, because it's such a good banana. But of course we have the plantains as well, and the other type of bananas as well, and also there's the sweet banana, the small one. So there's a variety of it.
Okay. All right. Well, that was great. Thank you very much for coming in. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the conversation.
Okay.